Hello, students. Hope you are doing good. Have you read the poem written by Shirley Toulson, The Photograph? I hope you have gone through the poem and also you can memorize it. I also think that you are able to understand some of the points about this poem. Now, I am going to discuss the poem and the significance of some of the points. I think all of you have seen old photographs, and this poem is about such an old photograph. The poet is looking at her mother's photograph, which is an old one. And uncle clicked the photograph. Okay, and there are three girls there on the photograph. They were smiling through their flying hair. The poet says in the first stanza, the poet says, "A sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born, and a sea which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet." So their terribly transient feet touch the water of the sea. The poet, as well as the photograph, presents transitoriness of human life against the permanence of the sea. The sea symbolizes eternity. Eternity, that means timelessness. The sea is a symbol of timelessness. Okay, and with the photograph, the author can see how her mother looked when she was a little girl of 12. Her mother was only 12 years old. And the photograph shows her on a beach with her two girl cousins who were younger than her, and the cousins were holding her hand. The day might have been windy because their hair was flying on their faces when the uncle clicked the photograph. Looking at the photograph, the poet says that her mother had a beautiful face. But it was a time while the poet was not born. The photograph was taken before the birth of the author. The sea was washing their feet. The poet says that the sea has changed only little, but much change has come about to those whose feet was washed by the sea. Then you also find that there are three stages described by the photograph. The photograph describes three stages. In the first stage, the photograph shows the poet's mother standing at the side of the cousins, and they were enjoying their holiday. She was only 12 at the time. And the second stage takes us 20 or 30 years after the clicking of the photograph. The mother would laugh at the way she and her cousins Betty and Dolly were dressed up for each holiday. And in the third stage, As you know, the poet remembers the mother with a heavy heart. The photograph revives a nostalgic feeling in the poet. So, nostalgia comes to the mind of the poet. After 30 or 40 years, the mother would take out the photograph and had a look at it. The poet thinks, the poet imagines it, how her mother had taken out the photograph and looked at it. By the time she was married and had a daughter, she would laugh a little and say, "Look at Betty and Dolly. See how they have dressed for the beach." By now, she can only remember those days. Huge change has come about, and she is no longer an innocent girl of 12. Much changes have come to her mind and body. After some years, the poet's mother dies. Now the poet remembers her mother's laughter. For her, it is a thing of the past. The mother of the poet has passed away. So the poet feels grief. She says, the sea holiday was her past and mine is her laughter. The poet recalls the smile on the beautiful face of her mother, and it is only a memory. Just like the mother remembers her old days, now the poet can remember her in that way only. However, in course of time, the two of them learn to live with their losses, and the feelings about the losses had made a permanent impression in their wry faces. The poet says that her mother had been dead and now she feels herself in a situation that there is nothing to be said about but only emptiness. So the last lines of the poem are like this. Now she has been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived. And of this circumstance, there is nothing to say at all. Its silences. The last line is, its silences. The silence of this situation silences her. In other words, she is left speechless. The situation presented in the poem with the help of the photograph is visible through the feelings of the poet. The poet can't express her feelings as if she lacks adequate words. This poem reminds us some Shakespearean sonnets where the poet describes the injuries done by time. Time's best jewels are taken away from the time seized by the cruel hands of time. And it is said in this poem also. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you are able to understand the significance of the poem.